In the sprawling lecture halls of the Interstellar Alliance's Academy, students from countless species gathered, their diverse forms casting a vibrant mosaic of shadows across the cold metal floors. This was the premier institution for military and strategic education in the galaxy, where the finest minds came to learn, share, and sometimes to challenge the status quo. Among the students, a particular group of newcomers stood out. These were the humans, a species only recently admitted into the Alliance following a series of diplomatic negotiations that had more twists and turns than the Orion Nebula. The humans were peculiar, not just in their appearance, but in their mannerisms and, most importantly, their strategic thinking. Today's lecture was a special one, titled Unconventional Warfare Across Cultures, and it promised to delve into tactics that diverged from the standard protocols taught in most military curriculums. The lecturer, Professor Tharchak, a renowned strategist from the insectoid race of Xylor, clicked his mandibles in anticipation. His multifaceted eyes scanned the room, taking in the eager faces of his students. As we explore the various combat tactics utilized by different civilizations, we must keep an open mind. Tharchak began, his voice a harmonious buzz that filled the lecture hall. Each species has its own unique approach based on their physiology, psychology, and planetary conditions. The lights dimmed, and a hologram flickered to life above the center of the hall, displaying various battle scenarios. Tharchak pointed to a particularly chaotic scene, a swampy battlefield with creatures leaping from the mire, ambushing an armored convoy. This, students, is a typical guerrilla warfare tactic used by the amphibios of Swamplar 5. They use their environment to their advantage, striking swiftly and retreating into the depths where heavier forces cannot follow. The students murmured among themselves, impressed by the cunning of such tactics. All, that is, except the humans, who seemed mildly amused, if not entirely unfazed. The lecture progressed, with Tharchak showcasing more strategies, from the high-speed aerial dives of the Aviolans to the seismic traps set by the rock-like crystallines. Each example was met with nods and notes, except from the human contingent, who whispered and exchanged knowing looks. It was during the Q&A session that a human student, Lieutenant Sarah Jensen, raised her hand. She stood, her uniform crisp, the insignia of Earth's unified forces gleaming under the holographic light. Professor Tharchak, you have shown us many interesting tactics, but I wonder if the scope of unconventional might be broader than what we've discussed here. May I present a case study from Earth's history? Tharchak's antennae twitched in interest. Of course, Lieutenant Jensen. We welcome insights from all cultures. Sarah nodded to her colleague, who operated a portable holoprojector. A new scene enveloped the room, showing a snowy landscape with a small force of humans engaged in combat against a seemingly overwhelming enemy. This, Sarah began, is the Battle of Bastonia, fought during a war on Earth called World War II. Outnumbered and surrounded, the human forces used the harsh weather, psychological warfare, and improvised tactics to hold their ground until reinforcements arrived. The alien students watched in rapt attention as the hologram depicted humans, not much different from themselves, crafting deceptive maneuvers and utilizing the environment in ways that Tharchak hadn't covered. The lecture hall buzzed with renewed energy as the implications of such adaptive warfare began to dawn on them. As the hologram faded, Tharchak clacked his mandibles appreciatively. A compelling demonstration, Lieutenant. It seems that human ingenuity in warfare is quite expansive. Sarah smiled, her eyes scanning the room, meeting the gazes of those who had once doubted the tactical prowess of her people. Thank you, Professor. We believe that sometimes the best strategy is not just to adapt to the environment, but to adapt the environment to your strategy. The room erupted in applause, not just for the tactics displayed, but for the new perspective introduced. As the students filed out of the lecture hall, the discussions were vibrant, with the human students at the center, sharing more tales of Earth's storied military history. Unknown to them, these exchanges were just the beginning. As the Academy would soon learn, The introduction of human strategies would not only shock their alien peers, but eventually reshape the tactical landscape across the galaxy. In the weeks following the lecture on unconventional warfare, the Academy's corridors buzzed with whispers and debates about the ingenuity of human combat tactics. The humans, once mere curiosities due to their recent inclusion in the Alliance, were now the subject of intense scrutiny, and in some cases, covert admiration among their peers. In a quiet corner of the Academy's vast library, a group of human students, including Lieutenant Sarah Jensen, gathered around a large circular table strewn with digital scrolls and holographic displays. They were deeply engaged in planning their presentation for the upcoming interspecies tactical tournament, an event that tested the strategic prowess of students from various civilizations in simulated battle scenarios. As the group debated their approach, a tall, lean figure approached them. It was Rilke, a cadet from the reptilian slith species, known for their cold logic and strategic minds. Her scales shimmered with a subtle iridescence as she spoke, her voice carrying a slight hiss. "Lieutenant Jensen, I observed your last presentation. Your species' ability to utilize psychological elements in warfare is intriguing. I wonder if you'd consider a collaboration for the upcoming tournament." Sarah, recognizing the potential for a valuable alliance, nodded. "We'd be interested, Cadet Rilke. Combining our psychological tactics with the Slith's mastery of environmental manipulation could prove unbeatable." The group quickly expanded their strategy discussions, integrating Rilke's insights on environmental control, which included altering battlefield conditions to confuse and weaken the opponent. This blend of human ingenuity and Slith precision created a novel tactical doctrine that neither species could have developed alone. As the tournament approached, their preparations intensified. They crafted scenarios where illusions and environmental factors led adversaries into traps or forced them into disadvantageous positions. Their tactics were a symphony of mental and physical chess, pushing the boundaries of the conventional strategies taught at the Academy. On the day of the tournament, the atmosphere was electric. Teams from various species had gathered in the simulation chamber, a massive arena equipped with technology capable of creating hyper-realistic battle environments. The human Slith team's first scenario was a dense, fog-laden forest, where visibility was near zero, mimicking one of the battlefields from Earth's history combined with a toxic Slith fog that could disorient non-acclimated species. As the simulation began, their adversaries, a team of aviolans, renowned for their aerial superiority, struggled. Their sonar systems were scrambled by the fog, and their usual advantage of flight was negated by the dense canopy and strategically placed noxious gases that the humans and Slith controlled. Each move by the aviolans was anticipated and countered with precision. Sarah and Rilke directed their forces with a calmness that belied the intense focus each maneuver required. The simulation ended with a clear victory for the Human-Slith Alliance, their combined tactics leaving little room for the aviolans to maneuver. The success in the initial rounds propelled them into the finals, where they faced the Crystallines, masters of seismic warfare. This time, the Human-Slith team adapted their strategy to create illusions of instability and phantom seismic activities, leading the Crystallines to misjudge the stability of their footing and the actual epicenters of attacks. As the final simulation concluded, the applause was deafening. The Academy had not seen such innovative use of combined tactics before. The Human-Slith team was declared the victors, not only of the tournament, but also of gaining a new level of respect among their peers. Their victory demonstrated a profound lesson that resonated throughout the Academy. In the vast and diverse expanse of the galaxy, collaboration between different species could unleash potentials that were unimaginable when operating in isolation. The humans, with their readiness to integrate and adapt, had not just excelled in the tournament, but had sown the seeds for a new era of interstellar military strategy. The aftermath of the tactical tournament rippled through the Academy with a palpable intensity. Teams from various species analyzed and dissected the Human-Slith Alliance's strategies, eager to adapt or counteract them in future engagements. It was a time of intellectual ferment, where old doctrines were questioned and new tactics were born. In the heart of this whirlwind, Sarah Jensen and her team did not rest on their laurels. They knew that their success had put them under a microscope, and that every species would be keen to decipher and possibly replicate their methods. To stay ahead, they needed to evolve continually. One late evening, in the Academy's simulation labs, Sarah and her team, along with Rilke, were testing a new concept. They were experimenting with virtual reality environments that could simulate not only physical and environmental conditions, but also the emotional and psychological states of adversaries. The aim was to develop deeper insights into how stress, fear, and morale affected decision-making in battle. As they adjusted parameters and ran simulations, Professor Tharchak observed quietly from the sidelines. His interest in the humans had grown since their notable presentation and subsequent tournament victory. He saw in them a spark of revolutionary thought that, if nurtured, could redefine strategic warfare. "Your approach to warfare integrates more than tactics. It seems to weave in human psychology deeply," Tharchak remarked, stepping closer to the holographic interface displaying fluctuating stress levels in simulated troops. Sarah paused the simulation, turning to face the professor. "Yes, we believe that understanding the mind is as crucial as understanding the battlefield. Fear, hesitation, resolve, these can tip the scales as much as firepower or numbers." Tharchak nodded, his antennae twitching in contemplation. "I propose an idea," he said slowly. "What if we expand your research? Let's integrate it into the curriculum here, develop it as a new discipline. We could explore the intersection of psychology and strategy at a depth never before attempted in the Alliance." The proposal was ambitious and would require approval from the Academy's board, a conservative body that often resisted radical changes. However, the potential to pioneer an entirely new field of strategic studies was too compelling to ignore. Over the next few weeks, Sarah, Rilke, and their team drafted a detailed proposal. They outlined a curriculum that included psychological warfare, resilience training, and the strategic use of emotions in military tactics. They argued that the galaxy's shifting dynamics required new ways of thinking about warfare, ones that embraced the complexity of sentient emotions and psychological diversity. The day of the presentation to the Academy board arrived. The room was filled with esteemed figures, each a master of traditional strategies and doctrines. Sarah and Rilke, supported by Tharchak, presented their case with a mix of rigorous data and real-world scenarios that illustrated the efficacy of their approach. After hours of discussion and debate, the board voted. The decision was close, but the final count favored innovation. The proposal was accepted, marking the birth of a new academic discipline at the Academy. The news spread like wildfire. Students from across the galaxy enrolled in the new course, eager to learn about this groundbreaking blend of psychology and strategy. The curriculum challenged them to think differently, to consider the mind as a battlefield of its own. As the new courses began, Sarah and Rilke lectured alongside seasoned professors, bringing their first-hand experiences and innovative ideas to eager young minds. The Academy, once a bastion of traditional military education, was now at the forefront of a new wave of strategic thought, one that promised to redefine warfare in the galaxy. The implications were profound, potentially influencing not just military outcomes, but diplomatic and cultural relations across the stars. As the semester progressed, the impact of the new course on psychological strategies was evident, not only in the classrooms, but also in the practical simulations and inter-academy competitions. The students trained under Sarah and Rilke began to dominate these events, employing tactics that baffled and outmaneuvered their opponents with an almost eerie precision. On a crisp morning, the Academy hosted a delegation from the Unified Galactic Council, the governing body overseeing peace and conflict resolutions across planets and species. The Council was particularly interested in observing how the new teachings influenced cadet performances, considering the potential adoption of these strategies in peacekeeping missions. The delegation was led by Ambassador Yilreen, a venerable member of the telepathic species known as the Mindali. Her ability to sense emotions and thoughts made her particularly keen on assessing the psychological warfare course. She and her team were given a tour of the facilities, culminating in a live simulation that would demonstrate the students' capabilities. The scenario was a tense negotiation-turned-conflict on a disputed moon, where resources were abundant but claims were contested. The human Slith team, acting as one faction, was to secure a peace agreement or, failing that, achieve a tactical victory without widespread destruction. As the simulation began, Sarah's team utilized a mix of misdirection, feigned retreats, and broadcasts of false intelligence to sow confusion among their opponents. Rilke's input was crucial in manipulating the environment. She adjusted the lighting and atmospheric conditions to affect visibility and comfort, subtly tilting the psychological playing field in their favor. Ambassador Ylrine watched intently, her mind probing the undercurrents of emotion and strategy radiating from the students. She was impressed by their restraint and the subtle integration of psychological elements, which ensured that the conflict did not escalate unnecessarily. The simulation ended with a negotiated settlement that favored the Human-Slith alliance, but left room for future collaboration with the opposing team, showcasing a perfect blend of strategic prowess and diplomatic acumen. After the demonstration, Ylrine approached Sarah and Rilke. "Your methods," she said, "reveal a deep understanding of not only how to win battles, but also how to prevent them. The Council is interested in integrating these teachings into our peacekeeping forces." The endorsement from the Mindali ambassador provided a significant boost to the program. It also opened up internships and cooperative missions for students, allowing them to apply their knowledge in real-world scenarios under the guidance of the Council's experienced diplomats and strategists. In the following months, Sarah and her team participated in several high-stakes missions, where they applied their training to defuse volatile situations. These missions were often fraught with danger, yet the outcomes frequently validated their unconventional approaches, earning them commendations and respect. Back at the academy, the success of the students in the field led to an increased demand for the course. The curriculum was expanded to include more advanced modules, each delving deeper into the psychological aspects of conflict and resolution. These classes explored cultural psychology, nonverbal communication, and even the role of artificial intelligence in predicting and influencing group behaviors. The ripple effects of the course were profound, reshaping not just military strategies, but also diplomatic approaches across the galaxy. As alliances formed and shifted, the graduates of the Academy, equipped with a blend of tactical and psychological savvy, became sought-after advisors and leaders. Their influence helped to forge a new paradigm in interstellar relations, where understanding and manipulating psychological dynamics became as crucial as understanding the physics of space travel. The galaxy, with its myriad cultures and histories, was entering a new era of conflict resolution, guided by minds trained to think beyond the conventional, to strategize not just for victory, but for peace. As the psychological strategy program matured, it began to influence not only the tactics used by the military, but also the broader aspects of governance and civil administration across various systems. The alumni, now placed in critical roles throughout the galaxy, championed a new approach to crisis management that emphasized preemptive psychological assessment and intervention. In one of the core courses, students were introduced to the concept of predictive diplomacy, a method developed by Sarah and her team. This approach combined historical data analysis with psychological profiling to forecast potential conflicts and propose solutions before tensions escalated to open hostility. The course quickly became one of the most popular and challenging at the Academy, drawing in students from all disciplines, not just those pursuing military careers. On a particular day, the Academy organized a symposium where these ideas were to be presented to an audience that included key political leaders, military officials, and diplomats. The event was set in the Academy's largest auditorium, a vast dome with screens displaying data streams and holographic projections of geopolitical hotspots. Sarah opened the symposium with a case study on the recent civil unrest on the planet Varelis. She detailed how her team used predictive diplomacy to identify the underlying causes of the unrest: economic disparity, cultural misunderstandings, and environmental issues. By addressing these core issues through targeted psychological and material interventions, they managed to stabilize the region without military intervention. The presentation was followed by a panel discussion involving several notable figures, including Ambassador Yilreen, who had now become a significant proponent of integrating psychological strategies into the Galactic Council's operations. They debated the implications of such strategies on privacy and autonomy, discussing the ethical boundaries of psychological profiling and intervention. As the debates unfolded, Rilke presented a new software tool they had developed called EmpathNet, which could simulate potential outcomes of diplomatic initiatives based on emotional and psychological data inputs. The tool used advanced algorithms to predict how different species might react to various negotiation tactics, helping diplomats prepare more effectively for real-world interactions. The symposium continued with workshops where participants could engage with the EmpathNet software, inputting their own scenarios and observing the predicted outcomes. These interactive sessions not only demonstrated the capabilities of the tool, but also allowed for a hands-on understanding of the complexities involved in interspecies relations. As the day drew to a close, a proposal was made to establish a new department within the Galactic Council, one that would specialize in the application of psychological strategies in peacekeeping and governance. The proposed department would work closely with the Academy, utilizing its research and training programs to equip the Council's personnel with the latest in strategic psychological techniques. The proposal was met with enthusiastic approval, and plans were put in motion to integrate these new strategies more deeply into the fabric of galactic governance. This integration represented a significant shift from reactive to proactive management of conflicts and crises, promising a future where diplomacy and understanding preempted conflict and war. In the weeks that followed, Sarah, Rilke, and their colleagues worked tirelessly to set up the new department. They developed training modules, established research partnerships, and created simulation scenarios that would help future diplomats and peacekeepers navigate the complex psychological landscapes of the galaxy's diverse populations. Their efforts culminated in the launch of the Galactic Center for Psychological Diplomacy, a beacon of hope and a testament to the power of innovative thinking in the face of age-old challenges. The center not only symbolized a new era of conflict resolution, but also stood as a monument to the potential of human and alien collaboration in forging a peaceful future. Months after the establishment of the Galactic Center for Psychological Diplomacy, its influence was palpable across various sectors of galactic society. The center had become a hub for the most advanced psychological research and diplomatic training in the galaxy, facilitating workshops and seminars that brought together leaders from disparate worlds to foster mutual understanding and cooperation. At the heart of this bustling activity was the development of the Empathic Strategy Simulation Suite, ESS, a cutting-edge virtual environment designed by Sarah and Rilke. ESSS was engineered to immerse users in complex geopolitical scenarios, allowing them to experience firsthand the emotional and psychological states of different species during negotiations or conflicts. During one significant event, the center invited key military commanders and diplomatic leaders to participate in a simulation that mirrored the escalating tensions on the border regions of the Tarian and Zoltar empires. The goal was to navigate the delicate negotiations without resorting to conflict, using an empathic approach to understand the fears and motivations of both sides. Participants wore neural-linked headsets that provided real-time emotional feedback, enabling them to feel the anxiety, mistrust, and ultimately, the potential for empathy between the conflicting parties. The simulation was intricate, layering historical grievances with current economic and environmental pressures that influenced the leaders of both empires. The experience was transformative. Many participants emerged with a new perspective on the conflicts they managed in real life, expressing a greater appreciation for the power of empathy in resolving disputes. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, prompting the center to plan a series of these simulations for all new recruits in the Galactic Council's diplomatic corps. Meanwhile, the Academy continued to refine its curriculum, integrating insights gained from the center's activities. Sarah and Rilke, along with a dedicated team of educators and strategists, developed a specialized track focused on empathic leadership and governance. This track aimed to prepare students for roles that required not just tactical brilliance, but also a profound understanding of cultural and emotional nuances across species. The curriculum was challenging, pushing students to engage not only with strategic and diplomatic theories, but also with psychology, anthropology, and the biological underpinnings of emotion and cognition. Advanced courses involved live interactions with AI simulations that adapted and responded to the students' emotional and psychological strategies, providing a dynamic learning environment that tested their ability to apply theory in realistic settings. As the center's reputation grew, it began to attract attention beyond the educational and diplomatic sectors. Corporations seeking smoother interstellar trade negotiations, planetary governments wrestling with internal divisions, and even cultural organizations interested in interspecies art and exchange programs sought guidance and training from the center. In response to this broadening interest, the center established the Outreach Division, tasked with adapting psychological diplomacy principles for non-military applications. This division ran public seminars and provided consultancy services, helping to weave the principles of psychological understanding into the fabric of everyday life across the galaxy. One notable project was the Harmony Initiative, a collaborative effort with artists and creators from various planets to produce a series of public performances and exhibitions that celebrated the diversity of the galaxy's species through a shared artistic experience. These events were crafted to enhance mutual understanding and empathy, using the universal language of art to bridge gaps that words could not. As these efforts unfolded, the galaxy began to witness a decrease in violent conflicts and an increase in cooperative ventures. The impact of the center, bolstered by the ongoing work of its founders and countless supporters, was a testament to the transformative power of understanding and empathy. The once distant dream of a harmonious and interconnected galaxy seemed increasingly within reach, guided by the steady hands of those who believed in the power of the mind as much as the power of might. Amid the bustling activity and groundbreaking initiatives fostered by the Galactic Center for Psychological Diplomacy, Sarah and Rilke planned an ambitious project known as the Concordia Symposium. This event was designed to be a summit unlike any other, bringing together leaders, thinkers, and innovators from across the galaxy to discuss not just peace and conflict, but the future direction of galactic civilization itself. The Concordia Symposium was to be held on Neutralis, a planet renowned for its stunning natural beauty and neutral political stance, making it the ideal location for delicate negotiations and open, uninhibited dialogue. The planet's vast crystal forests, which naturally amplified psychic energies, provided an environment that enhanced communication and understanding among the diverse participants. As the event approached, the preparations became a nexus of activity. Psychologists, cultural specialists, and logistic experts worked tirelessly to ensure that every aspect of the summit was conducive to fostering deep connections and meaningful discussions. Each detail, from the ambient settings in the conference rooms, designed to adapt to the comfort needs of various species, to the menus that carefully considered dietary restrictions and preferences, was meticulously planned. The opening day of the Concordia Symposium dawned clear and bright, with delegates arriving from distant systems, their ships glinting like stars against the dark canvas of space. As they descended onto Neutralis, they were greeted by the sight of the crystal forests, shimmering under the twin suns, setting a hopeful tone for the days ahead. Sarah and Rilke, having become the unofficial faces of this new era of diplomacy, welcomed the delegates with a keynote address that highlighted the journey of the Galactic Center and its role in shaping a new paradigm for galactic cooperation. They spoke of the challenges faced and the victories won, emphasizing the crucial role of empathy and psychological insight in overcoming differences and building a stronger, more unified galaxy. The sessions that followed were a whirlwind of ideas and perspectives. Panels and roundtable discussions covered topics as varied as the ethics of empathy and diplomacy, the role of artificial intelligence in maintaining peace across different cultures, and the potential for new forms of governance that could adapt to the unique needs of multi-species societies. One of the most anticipated sessions was a live simulation using the Empathic Strategy Simulation Suite, which had been set up to allow delegates to experience firsthand the complexities of a multifaceted diplomatic crisis. Participants navigated a scenario involving a disputed planetary colonization effort that threatened to escalate into conflict.
The simulation was designed not only to challenge the delegates, but also to provide insights into their own decision-making processes and the potential biases they brought to the table. As the summit continued, the discussions sparked by the daytime sessions spilled over into the evenings, with informal gatherings under the radiant light of Neutralis's luminescent flora. These moments of casual interaction often led to breakthroughs that formal sessions could not, as delegates shared personal stories and formed friendships that transcended political and species boundaries. On the final day of the Concordia Symposium, a declaration was drafted, known as the Neutralis Accord, which outlined a commitment to ongoing dialogue and cooperation among the civilizations of the galaxy. It called for the establishment of a permanent interspecies council to oversee the implementation of the strategies discussed at the summit and to continue the work of the Galactic Center in new and expanding ways. As the delegates prepared to depart, the air was filled with a sense of cautious optimism. The challenges ahead were daunting, but the foundations laid during the Concordia Symposium promised a path towards a more empathetic and united galaxy. The efforts of Sarah, Rilke, and their myriad collaborators had ignited a beacon of hope, a signal that would guide countless worlds towards a future where understanding and cooperation were the cornerstones of interstellar relations. The reverberations of the Concordia Symposium echoed through the corridors of power across the galaxy. The Neutralis Accord became a blueprint for cooperation, and the newly established Interspecies Council, known as the Galactic Unity Forum, quickly became a central figure in galactic diplomacy. With representatives from all major civilizations, the forum was tasked with translating the lofty ideals of the symposium into actionable policies. Sarah and Rilke, now recognized as pioneers in the field of psychological diplomacy, took on advisory roles within the forum. They were instrumental in setting up the Empathy and Strategy Department, dedicated to integrating emotional intelligence into the fabric of interstellar negotiations and governance. Their first major initiative under the forum was the Harmony Network, a project designed to establish communication channels that were not only technologically advanced but also culturally sensitive. This network employed translators skilled not just in language, but also in the cultural nuances of communication, ensuring that messages were conveyed in ways that resonated positively across different societies. Meanwhile, tensions on the frontier worlds of the Zathron cluster provided the first real test for the new approaches advocated by the Forum. These worlds, rich in resources but plagued by historical disputes, were a potential flashpoint for conflict. The traditional military-centric approach had done little to resolve the deep-seated issues, and the Forum proposed a different strategy. Sarah and a team of experts were dispatched to the cluster, where they began a series of engagements with the local leaders and populations. They utilized the psychological tactics developed at the Academy to map the emotional landscape of the region, identifying the root causes of fear and mistrust that fueled the disputes. Utilizing the Harmony Network, they facilitated a series of dialogues that were broadcast across the cluster, allowing the populations of the conflicting worlds to express their concerns and aspirations directly to each other. These broadcasts were interspersed with expert analyses and empathic commentaries, helping to soften long-standing animosities and forge a common understanding. The efforts began to bear fruit. As mutual understanding grew, the leaders of the Zathron cluster agreed to a series of joint projects, including a shared mining venture and a cultural exchange program, designed to build economic interdependence and foster personal connections between the peoples of the various worlds. Back at the Galactic Center, Rilke spearheaded the development of the Empathic Leaders Program, a rigorous training regimen for upcoming diplomats and leaders. This program emphasized real-world applications of the psychological strategies they had developed, preparing the next generation of leaders to approach conflicts with a mindset geared towards empathy and collaboration. The program also included a special module on crisis response, where trainees were placed in high-pressure environments designed to simulate potential diplomatic crises. Here, they practiced maintaining their composure and empathy, even under extreme stress, using advanced VR technology that responded dynamically to their emotional and psychological states. As these initiatives expanded, the effectiveness of the Forum's approach began to draw attention from even the most skeptical of societies.
Reports of reduced conflict and increased cooperation from the Zathran cluster encouraged other regions to adopt similar measures. The success of these efforts led to the establishment of the Intercultural Understanding Initiative, IUI, an annual event that brought together young leaders from across the galaxy to participate in workshops, simulations, and discussions designed to foster a deeper understanding of the diverse cultures that made up the galactic community. As the sun set on another year, the galaxy found itself navigating the delicate balance between tradition and innovation, conflict and peace. The work of the Galactic Unity Forum, guided by the vision and dedication of leaders like Sarah and Rilke, was slowly but surely weaving a new tapestry of galactic relations, one that promised a future where empathy was not just an ideal, but a cornerstone of civilization. As the Galactic Unity Forum continued to evolve, the galaxy witnessed a paradigm shift in its approach to diplomacy and conflict resolution. The strategies developed by Sarah, Rilke, and their colleagues at the Center for Psychological Diplomacy were now embedded in the operational doctrines of numerous planetary alliances, and even within independent mercantile guilds. In this climate of burgeoning peace and cooperation, an ambitious project was conceived: the construction of the Peace Beacon, a massive space station that would orbit a neutral star, serving as a permanent venue for the Galactic Unity Forum and symbolizing the unity of the galaxy. The station was designed to be a masterpiece of engineering and diplomacy, incorporating architectural elements and cultural motifs from across the galaxy. The Peace Beacon's inaugural ceremony was a spectacle of unity, with representatives from hundreds of species contributing a piece of their home world to be included in the station's Harmony Hall, a vast chamber at the heart of the beacon where the council would meet. Each piece, whether a stone, a crystal, or a vial of sacred water, was embedded into the floor of Harmony Hall, creating a mosaic that represented the galaxy's diversity. Meanwhile, a new challenge arose on the distant world of Yorvax, a planet with a volatile political landscape that had resisted previous attempts at mediation. The Yorvaxian factions were deeply entrenched in their positions, fueled by centuries of rivalry and bloodshed. It was here that the Forum decided to test a groundbreaking initiative: the Empathic Convergence. This initiative was a complex operation involving hundreds of diplomats, psychologists, and cultural experts, all working to facilitate a series of negotiations aimed at addressing the core grievances of each faction. The centerpiece of the convergence was the creation of an empathic field, a sophisticated network of AI-driven algorithms and empathy-enhancing technologies designed to heighten the emotional awareness of all participants. Sarah was at the forefront of the convergence, leading a team that painstakingly prepared the groundwork by establishing lines of communication that emphasized shared values and common goals. Each negotiation session was meticulously planned to ensure that the discussions progressed from less contentious issues to more divisive ones, building trust incrementally. The empathic field proved to be a transformative tool. As the negotiations progressed, the participants reported a heightened sense of understanding and a decreased inclination towards hostility. The field allowed them to literally feel the fears, hopes, and dreams of their adversaries, bridging gaps that had seemed insurmountable. After months of intense negotiations, the Warvaxian factions reached a historic accord, agreeing to lay down their arms and form a unified government. The success of the empathic convergence on Jorvax was a testament to the potential of psychological strategies in resolving deep-seated conflicts. This victory was celebrated across the galaxy, and the techniques developed during the convergence were soon adapted for use in other conflict zones. The empathic field, initially a controversial idea, became a standard tool in the Forum's arsenal, deployed wherever tensions threatened to erupt into violence. As these successes accumulated, the Peace Beacon grew not only as a symbol, but also as a hub of diplomatic activity. Its halls and chambers were always abuzz with delegates, negotiators, and scholars, all working to maintain the delicate balance of peace that now characterized the galaxy. The beacon also hosted the annual Galaxy Day celebration, a festival that had grown out of the Intercultural Understanding Initiative. Galaxy Day was a vibrant, colorful event that featured art, music, and cuisine from across the stars, celebrated not just on the beacon, but on worlds throughout the galaxy. Through these initiatives and celebrations, the galaxy not only learned to manage its conflicts, but also to celebrate its diversity, transforming old animosities into new opportunities for collaboration and growth. The legacy of Sarah, Rilke, and their peers at the Galactic Center for Psychological Diplomacy was thus cemented, not merely as architects of peace, but as builders of a new galactic civilization.